My younger brother was sent to a boarding school last year, but he never came back. My mom and stepdad refused to tell me why. It's been 8 months since I last saw him. The last time we were together, he was 12, and we were inseparable. I was the one who helped him with his homework, the one who made him laugh when he was scared or upset. But then one day, without warning, he was just gone. 8 months ago, I was told that my brother and our grandfather were flying out to a special school in a different state. When I asked why, my mom said he'd been struggling and needed to focus. They said he'd be staying there for the summer. I asked where, so I could visit him, but my mom brushed me off and told me he didn't want to see me. At that moment, a cold chill ran down my spine. I knew something was wrong. I pushed, asking over and over, but each time, her face grew colder. Finally, she snapped. My stepdad exploded, backing me into a corner. I don't want to go into detail, but he left me with bruises that lasted weeks, and I had to lie to my friends about why I could barely walk straight. 3 months later, I asked my mom when my brother would be home. She looked me dead in the eye and said he had written her a letter, saying he loved boarding school so much that he didn't want to come back yet. I knew she was lying, but what could I do? I forced myself to nod, acting like I believed her, but my heart felt like it was sinking deeper and deeper. 2 more months passed, and I grew desperate. I hadn't received a single text or letter, nothing to let me know he was okay. Then, one night, I saw my stepdad carrying out a box labeled with my brother's name from his room and tossing it in the attic. The next day, he started setting up a desk and a computer where my brother's bed used to be. My heart pounded as I confronted him, demanding to know what he was doing. He looked at me, eyes dark, and told me that if I kept sticking my nose where it didn't belong, he'd make me regret it. He said my brother was never coming back if I kept pushing. Then, with a cold smirk, he added, and if you mention him again, what I did last time will feel like a massage. I knew something was horribly wrong. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I confided in my best friend, Michael, who'd known me since we were kids. I told him everything, and he listened, shock and anger burning in his eyes. He told his parents, and they immediately offered to help. That night, I packed a bag, snuck out of my house, and stayed at their place. With their support, I reported everything to the authorities. I gave them our address, my parents' names, and every detail I could remember. The waiting nearly broke me. 9 days passed. I was barely holding it together when finally, my phone rang. It was Child Protective Services. They had found him, my brother. I collapsed, sobbing, before I could even hear the details. The reality was worse than I could have imagined. They'd found him living 700 miles away, with a man who had a long history with my stepdad. This man, it turned out, was someone my stepdad owed money to, a debt that had been piling up for years. To settle it, he'd sent my brother off as payment, a sick bargain that let the man do whatever he wanted. My stepdad and my grandfather were both arrested. My mom was released after telling authorities that she'd been threatened into silence, that she believed she had no choice. But to me, that felt hollow. She let it happen. My brother and I are both staying at Michael's house now while the authorities look for a foster home. My friend's parents have already arranged for him to start counseling, and I'm grateful. Sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night, certain I hear footsteps outside or the creak of our front door opening. For now, though, I'm focusing on my brother, hoping one day he can heal from this nightmare.